So thank you all for joining us, for accepting our invitation. We also have Dr. Zsuzsa Csisztu, who is an Olympian, a TV presenter, currently a vice president of the Hungarian Sports Journalists Association and EC member of the International Sport Press Association. Thank you for coming here as well. Ms. Sophie Kubi, director of strategic relations and training at the ADF International, a legal advocacy organization, and Ms. Katie Faust, who is an author and the founder of the children's rights organization called Them Before Us. And I am Noemi Palfavi, and I work here at the Matthias Corvinus Collegium.
The reason why I felt like that was because I understood feminism as meaning, well, equal rights for women. I grew up with a strong sense that I was very capable of doing anything that any boy could do, probably do it better.
And did you think the same that, okay, you are going to be always less than a man? Zsuzsa?
Thank you so much for the invitation today. It's really an honor to be amongst these fantastic women and, of course, in front of this audience. Well, since I have been involved with in this business, turning into this business, especially being the very first woman on screen in sports television in Hungary, was that I was an Olympian. I was coming from a very high competitive sports. I was a member of the Hungarian national team in 1988 in the Seoul Olympics, finishing in the first 8. So I would say I had the background, which was, thank you so much. You have to be your own, but you have to be professional, and you have to be definitely accurate in what you're doing.
I think we can all agree on that. Sophie, did you face any of the gender wars when you were growing up?
Well, I have to say, but I think, my job is so I work for ADF International, but my particular job within the organization is we train young people around the world who are brilliant and who you are hungry in life to get into positions of public impact. Many are women. And so I see kind of what are young women struggling with, how do their careers develop, etc., around the world. I see it in Asia, I see it in Latin America, in Europe.
To defining feminism, Katie, did you ever feel like a victim of these gender wars when you were growing up?
Nope.
Great answer.
I don't know if you want more than that, but no.
Thank you.
Like, whatever good came from, they're actually now going up against the female reality in terms of saying that, prioritizing career over motherhood. When we survey women who have young children, the majority of them want to stay home at least part-time with their kids.
You come back to the points you're making, Katie, important points about women working and combining work and motherhood. Again, I think there's some really interesting class differentials there. If your job involves sitting in front of a laptop, you're quite mobile and flexible in your work, it's an intellectual job, and you have a nice, comfortable office to go to, the choice between then giving that up for full-time babies and nappies and feeding, is probably quite a hard choice to make, and you're probably more likely, if you have children, to want to get back to the office.
I already have 100,000 of questions because you mentioned so many interesting things, and I also want to encourage the audience. Theologically, I would say that we are coming from quite similar backgrounds. And how do you think, how has the position of women changed over the decades, and what has feminists achieved today? What are the things that we should be working on, and what does feminism mean to you today? Katie?
Oh my goodness. I'm not going to start with, there are women that are oppressed in the world.
Generally speaking, we have choice. And I don't think, that goes beyond the female question. I don't think that we live in a society and a culture today where the abundance of choice makes us actually better people and gives us more happiness. I mean, every poll shows that we are actually not happy in life, and that we feel lonely, and that we don't know what the meaning of life is, and so on. So choice as such doesn't say much at all. Doesn't say much at all. Too much freedom without knowing how I want to use that freedom actually makes me probably more lonely, more unhappy than less freedom but more meaning and more sort of direction. Now, it's too easy and really, I think, inaccurate to say there is an injustice there. Maybe there is, maybe. I don't deny that there could be still injustices, but I think what our struggle has to be today is to say, what does it mean as a young woman today to sort of reconcile all of this, work, family, children? What does it mean today, and how can we be women? How can it be recognized that we don't have the same linear trajectories as men? And that would be truly a cause for women to say, okay, there's, for example, recognition culturally and in society and maybe even financially for us having children and for us educating them in the best way possible. So that means staying at home for a while and so on. What does that mean? Like, I see that this all decreases as well. There's no value in this. Hungary is a little bit of an island because you have enacted good family policy measures and so
You're more powerless in the face of making those choices. And the more we are encouraged to see men as somehow either being competition or against us, again, the less able we are to make satisfactory.
Meaning that they can choose between this, and then they can choose between staying at home and educating their children. And we're talking about 0 to 3 years, yeah, of the children. That has been, there's jurisprudence by the German Constitutional Court on this, that there has to be equality, that the contribution to society in educating your children has to be recognized as an equivalent contribution to a monetary contribution, meaning you work and pay taxes. So that's all jurisprudence. It was a political scandal you cannot imagine. Why? Because real choice mean. And then when we advocate, for example, for these things, as women, we don't advocate for every woman has to stay at home and, childcare is a very evil thing. No. We want real choice. And it's not happening in our society.
No, sorry, just very, very quickly intervene on that. I mean, I agree that lots of the choices that we are presented with today are kind of consumer choices, and they're not choices, meaningful choices about the issues I was talking about in terms of what does it mean to lead a good life. We're rarely having those explicit discussions. But I guess just to go back to the point I was saying about agency, that makes me almost want to defend fake choices at risk of just being a deliberate contrarian here.
There is just sort of I would say a statement itself that is a careerist woman. So today, fortunately, these are different days now, and of course, the field of sport is also has its own rules and rulings. However, we can see that there are these, let's call it new feminism movement, definitely stepped into this field and makes, although I don't think that the competition is going to be the same anymore. So what I believe at the moment, we have so much to do still for women, for example, in sports, in sport journalism, if I just talk about my field, of course, and the children's rights and in many fields. So at the moment, I believe that we still have a lot to do. We still have a lot to accomplish, a lot to get to. So
basically meaning, a biological man has access, because he identifies as a woman, although he has a penis and everything that a man has, as a woman he can use the bathrooms even in schools and colleges, which leads to these most absurd situations that you have 10-year-old schoolgirls going to shower with a 50-year-old man without supervision. And, obviously the parents are freaking out and say, this is a very severe security problem. And because of the sort of ideological lens that we have generally, this is
to the topic that we are currently discussing. Thank you for the anonymous question that was submitted from the audience. What are the roles of women in the family, church, and then the society in general? What do you think about this Bible statement, men and women, he created them equal?
Men and women were created equal. Oh, well, I would certainly agree with that. And in a way to answer that, but to kind of also pick up on no, I'm not speaking in direct contradiction or necessarily in relation to, but to the broader question, and I guess it relates here, about what we should be teaching children about gender and gender roles and what messages children pick up on that. So I've only been in Budapest since Monday, and already I've been really really lucky to get to meet Viktor Orban and to go to the Hungarian Parliament. And I hope people kind of excuse me if I bastardize, sorry, that's a bad word, take off steal a line that he used, which really, really stuck with me and impressed me a lot. One of the questions that he was asked in the session he held with us was on the issue of gay marriage and homosexuality and rights for homosexual people more broadly. And I'm terribly misquoting him here, so I hope he can't hear me. But he said something. I'm being very, very personal here, and so again, excuse me for being far too personal. So I had my first child when I was 24, and in the context of the UK at the time, that was seen as being kind of shocking, particularly for a middle class, I guess, young woman who'd been to university. It was seen as very, very young to have a child at the age of 24. Should just not be a question that young children are having to think about. It's just a statement of fact. You're a boy, you're a girl, get on with it, make a good life for yourself. But the fact that even those most basic things, people have to consciously think about, and then gets turned into this kind of political statement about who they are, their identity, what's important to life more broadly. I just think, wow, no wonder young people have mental health problems nowadays, because we make everything so flippin' complicated for them, and we need to remove so much of the politicization of our identities.
Their voice for women living in Muslim countries. They can't even leave their homes without a man.
Absolutely. I think it's really different, when and where you're looking at that actual problem, from what kind of perspective. And perspective really can lead to your opinion. Going back to the topic about what to teach to your children, I have 2 boys. And definitely with my husband, our goal is to bring up good as parents.
Joanna.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted very quickly on the question about the kinds of issues that feminists engage with, and mainstream feminists engage with. I think the best example of that from the UK is possibly an example that people haven't heard of because it's attracted such little publicity. To me, is kind of one of the biggest scandals of our time, which is that there's been a really, really big problem with girls, working class girls, particularly from northern towns in the UK, having been quite systematically and over a long period of time abused. These are girls who are in children's homes.
And of course, women have told men for 30, 40 years that it's basically a very, very, very bad thing to be a man. I have 2 brothers. I remember when we were like all teenagers or young adults, they were saying, men don't dare to court anymore. Men don't dare to show any interest anymore, and so on and so on. And if we look at women today with all these difficult choices we have to make about career, children, family, marriage, sacrifice, obviously, because you can't have it all at once. You can have a lot, but not all at the same time. This only works, and it works well, in my experience. With all my friends, I see countless examples. Very different ways how couples live this.
And when you then do away with all of those jobs and you replace them by service sector jobs, by jobs in care homes, jobs in retail or catering, these are jobs that are expecting much more feminine kind of values, which is not to say that it's feminism which has been responsible for this economic change, but just as a fact, if you're running a restaurant, I'm probably going to be very sexist now, but if you're running a restaurant, I think people would prefer to employ an attractive young woman who they think is going to carry the kind of interesting challenges in combining those 2 things. I haven't done it on my own. Obviously, I've done it alongside my husband, and I would not have been able to do it on my own, and I think that's a very, very important thing. I wouldn't want to politicize that. That's the important thing. The baby needs feeding, the baby gets fed, and as to whether that's that's breastfeeding or bottle feeding, and as to whether that should become part of your identity, you know, I'm a breastfeeding mother, I'm a bottle feeding mother, you know, that's just a nightmare situation, and that's where you get women kind of fighting against each other, and it just...
All of you have been saying that the overcomplication and over-politicizing this problem is definitely a root of the problems as it is. So what I'm saying is, be yourself. Everyone else is taken.
Thank you. Drop the mic. Sophia.
Yeah, so I would encourage women and have to sacrifice for that. I mean, you have to sacrifice in whatever, you know, sacrifices at great possibilities in whatever situation you are, as a single, as a mother, as a married woman, with or without children. Like, I mean, you can't avoid, like, it's not like that lifestyle is great and I will be totally happy. You have that in whatever situation you are. There's certain things you have to sacrifice, and there's certain opportunities and freedoms in it. But what I see all around me is that women don't dare to really think, you know, as a man, don't have a narrow view on what a woman ideally should look like. I mean, you know, there are men who say, you know, my wife or whatever should be at home and just care for the kids. That's a narrow view, I think, and not one that would work probably very well in marriage if you have a too narrow view on how it should be. But on the other hand, you know, I am emancipated in the good sense of saying, well, what are our intuitions, our deepest desires, individually and as a couple, on how to live this? Because there's not this one model anymore today that everyone...
Hostess, I'll put it that way. And, you know, we've been able to carve out careers for ourselves, but motherhood should happen first, if you can.
Thank you very much, Katie.